In my profession, they're pretty straightforward. I mean, the divorce rate is really, really, really high.
Mhm.
And there's even, I mean, there's programs, not so much anymore, but 20, 30 years ago, the programs used to tell you like, we don't care if you come in here single or come in here married or come in here whatever. You're going to leave single. It's not a threat. It's a promise.
This is your official invitation to the Pasta Night Club.
We're Michelle
And Ashley.
the female co-founder duo of the Pasta Night Couples Journal Set. We interview couples who are just trying their best. Feels
Let's
like
get into the dirty stuff.
asking the real, hard, sometimes uncomfortable questions we all really want to know.
Oh,
Or
you guys are having
like-
sex every day?
I mean, yeah.
Welcome to Love and Pasta. So we're so excited to welcome Taylor and Angie to Love and Pasta.
Welcome. Thank you.
And so true to your guys' story, which everyone's going to hear a lot more about, you guys are not physically together right now for the interview, which has been different than a lot of our other couples. But I think that this really highlights sort of what makes you guys unique and sort of some of the, not necessarily challenges, but just the real realities of life that you guys go through. So can we give you guys the mic and let you introduce yourselves and a little bit about your relationship, like how you guys met?
I'm Angie. Taylor and I met over 10 years ago. We were a Tinder success story. And he was in Madison at the time, and I was in Milwaukee. And somehow we had our distances on the app set far enough to meet each other. And so we were long distance for, probably the first year plus of our relationship. Along, he got accepted to med school in Chicago, and I ended up moving down there. And so we were no longer long distance.
Amazing. What was your first date?
I picked him up from the bus station, and we went to dinner at an Italian restaurant. And then there's this really cool whiskey bar that's like this hole in the wall, like very few people knew about it. We went there, and he ended up leaving his backpack in my car. And to this day, I think it was intentional,
On
but he
purpose.
says it wasn't. And
Taylor, was it? You have to come clean.
No, I swear it was not intentional. It was a
Just
great.
say it was. Maybe that's a better story. Be like, yeah, of course.
he's like, I just met you today. Why would I leave my computer with you? But then he
You
came
seem
up the next
fascinated.
day. And so we had our second date the next day, which was fun.
And so how did you guys get to the conversation of like, now we're dating? What did that look like?
So we started dating actually dating pretty quickly, maybe within like 2 weeks of meeting each other.
Okay.
And I mean, it wasn't anything overly crazy. She came to Madison. It was July 5th. I just remember because the 4th of July she had plans, so she came the next day.
Oh, I see.
And we went out on State Street in Madison, which is just kind of the place to go, and went to a couple bars, and then we picked up sandwiches afterwards at a place called Witch Witch. And
Oh my God, I know those. We had
Oh,
those
yeah?
in Tallahassee.
oh yeah, I think they're a chain. And yeah, I mean, I think we were just sitting on my couch, and I just looked at her and I said, "So I think we're boyfriend girlfriend."
Aww.
And that was it. I mean, pretty straightforward.
You know, Michelle, just like relationships, furniture tells a story, and sometimes it needs a little love to keep that story going.
Exactly. And that's where Once Upon Upholstery comes in. They're all about restoring the beauty in what matters most. Whether it's your favorite couch or a cherished family heirloom, they've got you covered.
Yeah, Chris and I actually used them to redo our restoration hardware cloud couch after it got completely ruined during our move from Austin to Miami, and they did
Oh
an
my gosh,
amazing
I
job.
remember that. It's such a good example. Just like couples grow and evolve, so do the pieces that fill your home. Once Upon Upholstery's skilled artisans breathe new life into your furniture, creating spaces that are as timeless as your love story.
So if your furniture needs a fresh start, like your relationship sometimes does, head to onceuponupholstery.com.
And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Once Upon Upholstery for some major home inspiration. How old are you guys?
How old are we now?
No, were you when you met?
24? 24, 25.
Oh,
Okay.
young.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24, 25.
Wait, so if you guys are like 24, 25, Taylor, were you already sort of like not warning her, but like telling her like I'm gonna go to med school? Where were you guys at career wise?
Yeah. So at the time, I was in graduate school, and before I met her, I was kind of in between getting a PhD in biomedical engineering versus going to medical school.
Oh
And
wow.
so I had found a nice research lab that paid for my grad school. And they said, if you decide to do a PhD, we'll let you stay. And if you just want to do a master's and go to medical school, that's also fine. We'll still pay for your school. So that was good. And so I ended up going to medical school. And then when I had met Ange, I knew at that time that I was going to apply to medical school. I hadn't applied yet, I don't think. And so I was pretty forthcoming and I said, hey, like, I'm planning to go to medical school. And honestly, I wasn't just planning to be a doctor. I was planning to be a surgeon. That was the reason why I
Okay.
left engineering, was because I worked with so many surgeons. And so I knew their day-to-day life. And I was like, oh, that seemed pretty cool. I would really like that. But I grew up in a medical household. My
Okay.
mom's a pediatrician. My grandfather was an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. And so I knew that it was a little bit different lifestyle than kind of your average
Yeah.
family. I knew all my friends had different lifestyles than me because my mom was on call and
Right.
my grandfather would operate really late at night sometimes. And so I told her, I said, look, I can tell you what this is going to be like to be with somebody who's doing this, but you should just look it up for yourself, because I'm sure there's things online of people who talk about what it's like to be married to a surgeon or
Yeah.
whatever.
So you kind of warned her then a little bit.
Oh yeah. In my profession, they're pretty straightforward. I mean, the divorce rate is really, really high. And there's programs, not so much anymore, but 20, 30 years ago, the programs used to tell you like, we don't care if you come in here single or come in here married or come in here whatever. You're going to leave single.
Wow.
It's not a threat, it's a promise. Just because it is. And there's even books. I have a book from the 1960s that says how to become a surgeon, and like chapter 1 is don't have a family.
And how did you feel like going into it knowing that? Was your priority just being like, I just want this career and I'll see if the relationship can work out?
No, I would always prioritize my family. That's what my mom did as a physician. And I knew it was possible, but I knew that it just looks different. So if you watch TV and you watch people who have families on TV, or you lived your own life and you didn't grow up in that, like you're not going to have what that was.
Yeah.
But it can still be really great and really awesome. And there's a lot of nice perks too about being a physician.
Well, especially once you get through the school part. But it kind of feels like, and Angie will let you chime in on this more, but it kind of feels like sort of the journey getting to the actual becoming of the surgeon that's like the really rough part. And the crazier part is that you guys are doing it with 2 toddlers, essentially.
Yes.
Well, I'm super curious, Angie, because I feel like if you don't come from a family that is in the medical field like that, you probably don't realize, like people can warn you and tell you, but it probably doesn't totally sink in until you really go through it. So I wonder from your perspective, even when Taylor warned you and maybe doing your own research, how did you go into it to prepare yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. So he definitely did warn me. And we had a lot of conversations around it because
That's nice, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
that is
no,
super nice.
it is. And I think it's critical because you start to fall for someone. And if you get all of a sudden you're in med school and all of a sudden like their schedule is just so different from when we first met, it's a slap in the face. So I appreciated that he was very forthcoming with it. And I did do a lot of research. There's not a ton. I mean, there's some blogs out there, but back, 10 years ago, like, Instagram was a thing, but there weren't like communities. Yeah, it's not the same as it is now. And so there didn't feel like a lot of resources for significant others or spouses. And yeah, I mean, like you said, Michelle, it's one thing to try to read about it and prepare yourself, but it's totally different actually living it. And I think the biggest thing for us was just really prioritizing communication. Like he'll come home and tell me about his day. And one of the things that I was really nervous about actually was like, he spends so much time at the hospital that he's going to be sharing all these experiences and heavy things that you experience with his resident friends or med school friends, and then come home and not want to talk about it. And then we'd kind of be living this separate life. And he made it a priority to not do that. Like he was very intentional with making sure that I felt part of both sides of his life.
The hospital dynamic is a really interesting one to me. And it's not something that I've personally worked in before, but I have a little sister and she is the physician's assistant. And It's very interesting to me, especially like the groups of people that are, she works for an orthopedic surgeon. And it's very interesting seeing sort of the relationship dynamics. There's so much conversation today about emotional cheating, right?
Yeah.
And the relationship dynamics that they all have with each other is very interesting to me watching from the outside. Not because I believe that that's what's happening, but to Andrew's point, you're going through really intense things together and you're together all of the time. And it's also really acceptable to be texting or talking at all hours.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really good point, Angie. How have you guys navigated that? Like, Taylor, do you like introduce her to the people that are a part of your team? Or are you guys like, do you guys do group activities that make, like, what does that look like?
So we'll do, if we have like resident, because I'm a resident. I don't think I ever actually said that out loud.
Okay.
But we do have like resident outings, and we go to some, maybe 2 or 3 a year. And so she's met a number of my residents, and a couple of them. What's that?
That's nice.
Yeah, it's super nice.
Yeah.
So she has a face to the names.
Yeah. I like that. Do you like that, Angie? Or is that like kind of make it worse?
Yeah. It was interesting too. So I don't know if you guys know much about like the transition from med school to residency and that whole process.
No, talk us through that, Angie.
Sure. And Taylor, you can jump in if I'm not doing it justice. But in med school, you do 2 years of schooling and then 2 years of clinicals. And then you start applying to residency programs in the specialty that you want to go towards. So Taylor's in general surgery. And so you apply all over the country, and then you'll fly out to interviews. If they offer you an interview, you'll go. And a lot of the programs encourage the med students to bring their significant others with, and I don't know, maybe they don't encourage it, but they allow, or they like say, yeah, your spouse,
They sure.
and other is welcome to join for this event. And so usually for the interview process, it's set days, and a lot of people will come in for interviews on those days. So they'll do an event the night before where the current residents at that hospital will be there to talk to the incoming interviewees or med students and can answer questions. And you really get a chance to ask the questions that you don't get to, like the things you don't find out in the interview process. So like, what is the work-life balance? Can you have a significant other? Do you ever get to see them? And so I made it a point to go on a lot of those interviews or those trips. And most of the time I was the only significant other there. Other people either didn't have one or didn't bring theirs. And so that was very interesting to me. Like I really wanted to be part of that. And if I'm going to be following him somewhere in the country, I want to know where we're going to be moving to. And we got to ask a lot of questions. And there were some programs that were like, you will not see your significant other. If we go out together. She won't come. And they're pretty open about it. And so that was helpful for us to know and make decisions around that. And so that's something like, I don't know too many people in med school, but the few people that I have talked to, I've really encouraged them to have their significant other join them on the interviews because I think it is really important.
Yeah. Do you feel like, Taylor, because you have this wife that is super supportive and that you guys have these small children and that she's really kind of been in it to win it with you and like going to the interviews, being so involved, like, do you feel like that feels different than most of your colleagues?
She's putting in the effort.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it does mostly because thinking of, and this is going to be unique to my co-residents, but most of them aren't married.
Okay.
We do have a number that are, and some that have kids, and their dynamic is, it's their own, and we haven't had any like divorces or anything in our residency like since I've been there. Okay. But I would say a lot of the residents aren't married, and I think it's, I'm kind of guessing. But I think it's because they're kind of worried about that and worried about if the other person's going to be understanding. And it's also really hard to date in residency, to be honest.
Right. Does your program have anything that they offer, like, because you are married or if someone is in a relationship and they're, I don't know, experiencing difficulty because of being in the residency, like, if you go to someone, like, are they like, we'll help you guys with counseling, or like, have you got, like, is there any support system like that?
I've never heard of that. We do have like psychology support systems. So like we get free counseling for us.
For yourself.
For me. But I've never heard of like a couples counseling. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's never portrayed to me.
Yeah. One of the things for the program that he's at, and he's applied and got into residency before COVID.
Oh,
This program did have a spouse community, and they really prioritized that. When COVID hit, which he started like summer, fall of 2019. So he was in it about 6 months before COVID really hit. And so that community kind of fizzled a little bit. And then they did pick it back up. It's basically just a Facebook community now, and they do like kid get-togethers on a monthly basis. But they're during the day. So for parents that also work, like it doesn't work for me. So I'm actually not involved in that community, unfortunately.
right. Because you're like, I have a job.
Yeah. And so
And you guys do have 2 kids, but did you have those kids before you started residency? No, it was after.
I was just gonna ask, could you guys give us a timeline, like from the which date where we decided that we're together? And then can you guys walk us through, like, in conjunction with what was happening, Taylor, in your career, and Angie, also in your career? Like, you have a really amazing job too. And then can you guys show us, like, how did you make time to plan a wedding, or did you not? Like, what did that look like?
And to have babies.
Yeah.
So yeah, Taylor was in grad school when we met in 2014, and then started med school 2016. No,
15.
2015. And that was in Chicago. And then med school is 4 years. I was working marketing job at the time, and I am still in that same role, same company.
Oh,
A
wow.
lot of flexibility and autonomy. And I was able to take my job down to Chicago and work remotely back in 2015, 2016. So I've actually been a remote worker since way back then. And so our lives.
Yeah. Way before it was normal.
Yeah. And then we moved to Milwaukee in 2019 for residency. And then we got pregnant right about the time that COVID hit. And so we had our first kid in the fall of 2020. And then second kid in the fall
That's
of
stressful.
2022. Yeah, it was.
Until you were working during COVID.
What's that?
You were working during COVID.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just going to say, I can't imagine, Angie, what it must have been like for you going through COVID. And obviously, I'm sure being really worried about Taylor being in the hospital every day at the same time that you're pregnant with your first child. At that point, were you guys living separately, or was he still coming home?
So when COVID hit, he was in Wausau. So we were living separately, which actually kind of worked out because the first trimester for me was pretty rough. So we were living apart the first 2 months of my pregnancy, which kind of worked out. I slept a lot. And then he moved back and, was on normal rotations again. And so, and then I ended up having really severe preeclampsia and delivering at 32 weeks. And so our first baby spent 6 weeks in the NICU, which was really hard. So no other family got to meet him until he came home from the hospital, because we couldn't have others coming into the NICU. And then I actually got COVID while he was in the NICU. So there was 2 weeks that I didn't even get to see him, except for through FaceTime. So the nurses were wonderful, and they let us.
And was Taylor around during that time?
He was. He did not go to the hospital during those 2 weeks just to play it safe.
Yeah, that's fair. And then wait, so the hospital where the baby was, Taylor, is that the same hospital that you were working at, or different?
No, it was a different hospital. But interestingly enough, it is one that we rotate through. I just wasn't there at the time.
Okay. But it was probably nice for you to know that you had sort of not an eye on that hospital, but that you had people that you could reach out to or whatever as you guys were going through that. That's really intense. So then when you went through your second pregnancy, what was that like? Angie, was he around for that one?
Yeah. A lot of residents will take 2 years in the middle of their residency to do research. And Taylor was able to do that. So for those 2 years, basically up until this past July, we kind of had a taste of what it was like if he had a 9-to-5 job. He worked from home because he did his research from home a lot. And so he was around for the birth and for the first basically 2 years of Jillian's life, which was really cool because he was able to be there for dinners and bedtime and breakfast and all of the stuff that he generally misses on a birth day.
Taylor, how did you feel being there for those 2 years? Did it ever make you this is what I want this now. And
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's still part of me. I mean, I think the first like couple weeks of me going back, it was like every day I'm just like, oh, I need to just quit this. Like figure out
It's almost
something.
like opening Pandora's box. You're like, oh no.
Because it was. I mean, it was so nice. It was just like amazing. And alternatively, like work in the hospital, like I always tell people, like it's like 99% of my job I kind of hate.
Yeah.
It's just that 1%.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know the medical field that well. So like once you actually go past the residency and you're a doctor there, is that your schedule? Like, does it ever get better?
Yeah, it is nice. Your schedule, your first couple of years when you're done, are kind of going to set your career a little bit. So those first couple can still be kind of tough because you're like establishing yourself. You're building a patient base. You're building a name for yourself as well. If you're in research, you're like applying to some of your first grants, et cetera. Because a lot of academic surgeons, we do clinical work operating and seeing patients, but we also do research on top of it. But even if you're in private practice, like you still got to build your patient base. But then after that, after the first couple of years, it can be kind of what you want it to be. If you want to operate like crazy, be super, super busy, you can do that. If you don't want to do that, you can find jobs that allow you to have more freedom, more part-time. And then there's even like things that are called like locums, like a locum surgeon, which is almost like a rental surgeon. So like hospitals can pay to have somebody take a couple days, but then that person isn't employed by that hospital. So like if you want to just work 3 days a week or 3 days a month, I mean, you can do that. So it's just kind of what you want your career to be.
Yeah, that's nice that there's options.
Yeah.
What's your guys' plan? I mean, that's definitely interesting, right? There's so many different options, but they definitely have different financial upside.
Well, have you guys actually had the conversation between the two of you and communicated that together of what you guys see for yourself in the future?
I mean, I'd say it's just like an ongoing conversation. Yeah. We're constantly talking about it. And right now my interest is in surgical oncology, so cancer surgery.
Yeah.
And so when I'm done with residency, I'll actually do another 2 years of training, which is called a fellowship in surgical oncology. And then, I really loved, so the research that I did was on advocacy work for improving access to surgical care for patients who live in very under-resourced areas. So I have grants in inner city Milwaukee, and then I have projects in East Africa.
Awesome.
And so, all that kind of stuff. And so I still want that to be part of my career as well. So that would lead us more to like an academic setting. But again, the nice thing about it is that you're not as clinically busy. I mean, you still operate and you see patients, but maybe it's only 2.5 days a week. And then you have your research time, which you can kind of do any time of the day.
Right.
So it gives you a little bit more flexibility where you're like, I really want to be home by 5. I want to have dinner with my family. You might pay for it because maybe you have to work a little bit at night after everyone goes to bed, but at least you have that flexibility.
So Angie, obviously knowing, so your children, they're both girls, right? 2 girls?
No, a boy and a girl.
And so who's the older one? The 4-year-old is the boy?
The boy.
Okay. So if we're looking ahead 2 years of the fellowship, your son is now in kindergarten or first grade. So he's gone to school. The baby is now 4, coming up quickly behind him. And what's the plan? Are there more kids? Angie, when you hear he's going to be doing his fellowship for another 2 years, what's your reaction to that?
I mean, I went into this knowing it was going to be a long journey for sure. He wants more kids. I'm undecided.
Okay.
He grew up in a family of 4 kids. I grew up in a family of 2 kids. And I don't know, to me, like it makes sense. I have 2 hands, 2 kids. Like it just, I mean, I'm a planner. And so like I process through all of it. Like, okay, well, if we were to get pregnant now, blah, 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 and like I think through all of that. Whereas he's just like, if it happens, it happens. And I'm not opposed to more kids, but as of right now, we're not planning for more because we have family close to us. My parents are 15 minutes away. His parents are about an hour away. And the thought of living somewhere else for fellowship, because most likely we will go somewhere away from Wisconsin for fellowship. It's really encouraged to do a fellowship or other training outside of the institution that you went to residency at because you get other perspectives and learn from other people. And so there is a high chance that we would go somewhere else. And the thought of doing this all over again without family close or like a support system.
Scary.
Is terrifying.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
So with the kids that you guys have now, is the 4-year-old starting to ask?
Well, Wesley, he does ask, and he knows that Daddy has an important job and he's helping people, and we're pretty open about it, you know, just because it is our reality. And so we just make it a point to be very transparent with him, like, Daddy won't be here for birthday breakfast, or all this kind of
so
stuff.
sad.
And so it is sad, but
Taylor, is that hard for you?
Oh yeah, it's like super hard.
How do you communicate that to the kids in a way that they don't resent that dad isn't there?
FaceTime helps a lot. That we can, he was there. So in our family, my family's tradition growing up that I've now introduced to our family is that for the morning of your birthday, we do breakfast in bed. And so like all the surrounding family that can join will come, and they'll
breakfast in bed.
And we'll be around and sing happy birthday to you. And and then we don't actually eat it in bed. We'll all go out to the kitchen and eat together. But yeah, we'll all pile into the bedroom and sing happy birthday. And then Taylor got to be on FaceTime for that. And but yeah, it's hard. I mean, like during his years, he did a few trips to Africa because some of his research was in Africa, and those trips were generally about 2 weeks long. And so like one year celebrated Taylor's birthday without him, and it's hard, but technology helps. And like when Taylor was gone for long term, like the Africa trips, we would make those little chain link like paper calendars, and we'd rip off, and so Wesley could visually see like, oh my gosh, there's only 3 left, Daddy's gonna be home soon. And so we tried to do like pretty involved.
That's a really good idea.
And then they're like excited to see you again and builds anticipation instead of resenting that you're not there. It's kind of a fun game for them.
But is it annoying for you, Angie? Like one of the things that I know used to frustrate my mom. So growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad worked a lot. He's an electrical engineer. And so my mom would say like around, and my sister and I would be like, oh, like, hey, and then, but she was the one really doing all of the heavy lifting in our day-to-day life. And then my dad would come around, and my sister and I would be like, oh my God, hi, like, we're so excited to see you, like a little bit of that, Angie, that you have, that you're just like, oh my God, like here I am doing, everything.
I think they're still too little to really do that. Like when they're all about Daddy, it's kind of phases, because then they'll be over that and then it's all about me. And so they're not quite at an age where it's just like, you, like you're always around, like quite hit that phase yet. But
do you ever feel like how do you feel having to, be the main caretaker and do the main things around the house, do all of that? How does that feel, having total shared responsibility in that sense? Like, of course, you do in other ways, but is there any resentment there? And if not, like, how do you deal with that? Like being the one to really have to take the lead on a lot of the things in the household?
That is one thing that I did kind of prepare myself for, just knowing going into this that like if a kid has to stay home sick, Taylor can't, and so that's one of the blessings about my job being so flexible, is that, if I can work odd hours, or like I'm a team of one. So I don't have other people really relying on me as long as I'm getting my work done.
At your job.
At my job. And so that makes it easier being the default parent. If a kid has to stay home sick, or if I have to take him to the doctor or whatever, I have that flexibility. So that is one of the reasons why like I've kept this job with Taylor's schedule, knowing all of that. That's been super helpful. Say there's resentment. I think there was a lot of frustration during like the newborn phase where he'd be like, wake me. I'm happy to help feed in the middle of the night. Wake me. And I always in the back of my mind was like, no, I can't, because you need to be on. Like you're operating. You can't be tired at work. If I'm tired at work, no one dies. It's fine.
Right.
If you're tired at work, that's a big deal. And so there was frustration around that in those early phases of like, I always have to be the one waking up. And he always offered. He was so wonderful with that. But like, I think part of me, I put it on myself, but then it's also reality too.
That's a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
Taylor, do you ever feel like jealous of Angie's relationship with the children, that you don't have that same relationship maybe?
No, never jealous. I mean, I think I just wish I was around them more and could have more of a relationship with them. But I mean, I think I have a great relationship with my kids given the situation because, I don't take a lot of me time, nor do I feel like I need a lot of me time. So like when I'm home, I'm like try to be with my kids or Ange like as much as I can.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, it must be hard too to go from a really stressful work and like everything you probably have to deal with to then come home and shift your mindset a little bit and really be present in there. Is that ever challenging to like, I can't imagine. Like, I feel like I already get in my head about work and so many things that I can't imagine being a surgeon where you're seeing all the things you're seeing and then have to be home and be present and really be, a good dad and all these things when you're there with having probably those thoughts in your head of work. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I wish I had something overly interesting to say about that. Honestly, I'm just very good at compartmentalizing my life. And so I do have a 15 to 20 minute drive to and from work. Okay. So I can kind of transition in that time. And like, I like to just be in a podcast or even just in silence, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That transition. But I really don't struggle with that. But I know people who do, because I mean, I meet people on the worst day of their life every day.
Right.
And that's hard. And like, I mean, like, and people die, like, and the one who was working on them and they die, and that's tough. And, but I think it almost helps because it just really makes you focus on like, I just watched somebody die. Like I just had to tell somebody that their mom died or that like we couldn't save their son. So I go home, like I want to eat up all that time with my family. Like I'm not going to like let that depress me or bring me down or anything like that.
When you listen to a podcast, is it like about medicine or is it something completely different to like?
No, usually not medical podcasts. Okay. I do have one surgery podcast that I like. Most of the ones I listen to are not medicine. And most of my friends, to be honest, are also like outside medicine.
That's good.
What did you say, Angie?
I said in that true crime.
Let's smile. We're talking about potentially having more children, or maybe not, right? But it seems like you guys are practicing potentially. So when it comes to now, like Taylor, you come home and you're only home just for the weekend, right? So now how are you guys like? How do you guys keep the intimacy? Like, are you guys planning ahead and being like, this is our time with the kids, and then this is our time with each other? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we do prioritize us time. My live super close, so we'll do date nights when we can, sleeping there. And so it's nice that we have that option. Because, I mean, all transparency, once the kids go down, it's like, I'm beat. I'm spent. Like, it's just done a day. That's hard for Taylor sometimes because he's just like, I miss you. And I just want time with you. Prioritize ourselves and
which must be hard too, because you obviously only get a certain amount of time and you want to spend time with the kids and your wife. And so to be able to balance that is probably tricky, but it's so nice that you guys have that support system close by.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like that's crucial. If it worked for that, it would be really hard. And Angie, I get why you're nervous about like, what are the next steps like that. I totally get why that would be in your head. Is there a way, Taylor, that like at a certain point, like does a conversation ever happen between you guys of like, Angie not working anymore, or if we decide to have a third child, Angie needs, day-to-day support or help at home, or I don't know if it's necessarily like a nanny, but I don't know, just something like that. Is that something that you guys talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about nannies and at-home babysitters, more lines of like if we had 3, then like 3 in daycare is like expensive, and economics of the situation might be that like a nanny would actually be cheaper.
Yeah.
And in terms of like when I'm done, I told Ange over and over, like, do what you want. Like, if you keep working, do that. If you want to like take up some other, like she's been working on doing furbishing a table. And there was a point in her life where she was like, oh, maybe I'll refurb furniture.
Yeah.
After the table experience, I don't know if that's going to be something she does. But, let's just say You know, it's like, do whatever you want. Like, and if you want to go back to school or whatever you want to do, like, it's going to be your time
Yeah.
to do whatever you want, and we'll figure it out. And that is the nice thing about when we're done and like you paid pretty well, is like it does offer you that ability where it's like you can outsource as much as you possibly want on salary. And then
And Angie, it's kind of nice knowing like you have been so supportive through his whole career, and then to have that moment back to yourself, because it must be hard. Like, I'm sure you prioritize obviously being a mom and being like, you know, a supportive partner and all of that. And you kind of probably didn't, you know, prioritize your passions or what you want to do in life. So I think it's nice that you guys have that dynamic too, where Taylor, you're like, of course, like now, then it'll be your time. Like you can do anything. And it's nice that you're both supporting each other and wanting each other to grow individually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is definitely part of me that feels like I'm just kind of going with the flow. Like my life is, I don't want to say on hold, because like life is wonderful. I'm very content and everything's good. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely part that it's like, okay, once you're done, then I can, you know, it's like kind of this waiting period of letting him finish up his training, and then I can focus on me. And I go back and forth on if I would want to be a stay-at-home mom. But the daycare that they're in right now is wonderful. And it's like, you know, they're getting exposed to all these sicknesses and socializing and all this stuff. So they're getting good immune system and all these things that like, that so many benefits of
socializing.
Daycare. And you know, it's a curriculum there. It's really learning things and come up with stuff to teach them. But like, I don't know that I want to, and others are like very qualified. And so, like, but right now, residents don't make a lot of money. And so we do have to be a dual income family to get by right now. And
which I think a lot of people don't realize.
Right.
I think that people think that you go through medical school and then you come out and then you're just like a rich doctor. Like, I don't think that people understand how much time and energy and probably also money you guys have also invested back into Taylor's career. That yes, there's that upside, but there's this big trench that you guys go through. I don't think people realize that.
Med school is very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got lots of loans to pay back once he's done.
Help is you come out and he's making, you know, he's doing well, and that, you know, is taken care of.
Angie, did a part of you before kind of, you know, just when Taylor warned you about all of this, was there a part of you that ever thought like, maybe this isn't for me? Like maybe this isn't the life that I envisioned for myself? Or was that never even a thought that crossed your mind?
No, I think I fell for him too fast. That like just my brain wouldn't let me go there. But I do think I tried to convince myself that it wouldn't be as bad as it is, which was really not the right move.
But that's probably self-preservation, you know? And then probably it's hitting you as you're like running away from the refrigerator.
Right.
So since you guys are like apart and then together, and obviously, you know, I'm sure, Angie, you have in your head that Taylor's going through life or death situations. Taylor's being thoughtful of the fact that Angie's raising 2 children mostly by herself. What happens when you guys fight? Like, do you talk about it? Do you save it for the weekend? What does that look like?
We don't fight. I mean, we're kind of one of those weird couples, like very logical and very even keeled, like type, like my fight or flight will kick in. And he's just like, nah, like we're good. Let's just talk about this. And previous relationships, we fought. And so like, I just kind of thought that was just a very normal thing for relationships. I mean, it is, but like, I thought that's how they like had to be. And so early on when we were dating, I mean, I would try to pick fights because like, I felt like we needed to like, you know, dig it out on some things, and we just like, we'll frustrate each other, but it stays pretty neutral.
Do you think that part of that is because you guys don't live together full time?
No, I think we just have really good communication. We just really prioritize that in our relationship. And I wear my emotions the outside, so he knows exactly when I'm like mad or frustrated or sad or whatever. So like, we just talk it out.
She's a terrible liar.
What
She's a terrible liar. It's like embarrassing. how bad of a liar she is.
Okay, you tell us, Taylor. Tell us the truth.
I've seen patients like hide like really bad abdominal catastrophes better than they or she can have approaches. It's like unbelievable.
But that's probably what part of like what helps, you know? Like, do you feel like, Angie, that also because you show your emotions so much that you're not hiding anything from him? So like, Taylor, do you feel like you can pick up on how she's feeling quicker? And then to your point, Angie, like then he's more logical and he's just sort of problem solving it, and then you guys can get over it? Yeah.
It's a good dynamic then.
That is a really good dynamic. Jealous of that dynamic.
I give all the credit to my parents on that, because I never in my entire life have seen my parents fight.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And that
How long have you been married?
my parents, oh my gosh, 36 years, 37 years.
And do you feel like they still have a very loving relationship? Like sometimes I worry that partners that can't fight, it's like you just go through life like very just like calm, and then it doesn't spice things up. Like sometimes a little bit of arguing and a little bit of that, like, I don't want to lose you, you know, like it kind of builds this, you know, passion in a way.
Yeah, no, they totally do, and we do too. I think, you know, I don't want to conflate like disagreeing with fighting. Like, you know, we certainly disagree like all the time. Like just like you take any two people and they're always going to disagree. But it's like, when do you let your emotions override like having a conversation of communicating? Because I mean, in my book, you know, if you let your emotions get ahead of you and you're just like yelling and you're screaming or whatever, focusing on yourself, you know, whereas like if you communicate and you're talking, you're really trying to focus on the other person, even if you don't want to. But in mine, like that's what I learned from my parents. Like that's what a marriage is you're trying to hope for the best for the other person, and yelling at them is probably not going to get you there.
Yeah. It's like this idea that like you guys are on the same team. And I feel like a lot of times those fights, it's like you're thinking in your head, like, how am I going to win, or how am I going to whatever, instead of being like, no, we're on the same team here. We both love each other. We both like have different opinions on something, but we're not trying to like hurt each other, or we're trying to like make this work together. So no, it's nice.
I feel like maybe I owe my boyfriend an apology. I started feeling like really guilty. I just felt like, no.
Okay, when I started our pasta night tradition, I never realized how much it would impact our relationship for the better. I've never been super into journaling, to be honest, but designing the pasta night journal has given us a way to follow our progress.
It's the same with me and Chris. Honestly, it was really hard for us to find intentional time to connect with each other, but the pasta night journal set finally gave us that space to do so. And it's also made us better communicators in our relationship.
Right? It's such a simple yet meaningful way to keep the communication flowing. It's for couples who want to dive deeper into their connection, but in a fun, relaxed way over dinner and maybe some pasta.
Exactly. It's not about waiting for the right moment. It's about creating it. Imagine a cozy night in, a great pasta dish, and some thoughtful prompts to get you talking about the things that really matter.
Not to mention, it's like a mini date night in a box. You can even make it a monthly tradition like we do. It's such a great way to reflect and grow together.
And the best part, just like us, you don't have to be a relationship expert. It's designed to be lighthearted yet meaningful, with prompts that help guide deeper conversations.
So if you're looking for something to spark more connection in your relationship, this is it. It's our favorite way to keep the love and the conversation going.
Head over to pastanightclub.com to grab your pasta night journal set and bring more intentional love into your relationship. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Pasta Night Club for more date night inspiration and relationship tips.
We can't wait to see you there.
No, but that's a really good way to put it, Taylor. And, you know, for it coming from someone who's a little bit, you know, you're pretty to the point. I get what she's saying about like, you're more logical. I don't want to say dry, but, you know, you're a doctor.
I'm pretty dry.
Engineer, you know, like, I would say that you're probably not like the fluffiest person. And honestly, the way that you just put that was really beautiful. And like, that hit me. I need to.
No, it's nice that you are that way too. Cause like, I think sometimes, I don't know, like I'm going to make a generalization, but I think women tend to be a little bit more emotional. It's like that feminine energy. You just have you are a little bit more emotional, not everyone, but you know, and so I think having a partner that is a little bit more logical and doesn't need to react in a way that makes you react more. Cause I think that like my husband sometimes gets really defensive or gets like, you know, in a way that makes me react in a way that's like, no, now I'm more mad, instead of like, it's so easy for him to be like, okay, like I understand what you're saying, I understand where you're coming from. And I always tell him that like, that's all I need is for him to just be like chill about it, not to like also come at me and get defensive. And that just makes things so much worse. But I think that's a special personality that can do that, or it can take a lot of work for someone to get there. So it seems like you've already figured that part out.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I try to focus on that. You know, like we all make mistakes. You know, we all sometimes let our emotions get ahead of us. To give yourself grace that that's okay. Like that happens. Like don't beat yourself up, but just always trying to be, you know, better and striving for better. And you know, for you and your partner, I think is the goal.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you guys do have a disagreement, does it typically happen like over text message since you guys can't really talk all the time?
Almost never. I don't even remember if we've ever had one over text message.
No.
So
Unless it's like
you're
misunderstanding.
waiting. You're like waiting. Like you guys wait until you have the opportunity to speak.
I don't even think we've like, I don't know.
It's usually only in person.
Yeah, I feel like our
People
texts
talk.
during the day are very like lighthearted, and like I'll send him a funny video or like, how was your case? Or, you know, it's kind of in the moment or like lighthearted stuff versus some of the bigger things. You know, if there's stuff that like, you know, maybe I planned something and forgot to tell him, and then he scheduled a golf outing with the guys or whatever, like I guess, yeah, then I wait until he comes home to be like, okay, let's talk about this. Like, what, you know, can we make this work and whatever.
Yeah.
But kind of going back to when Taylor was talking about how he compartmentalizes and then like comes home and just like wants to soak up the time. I think I kind of have that same mentality with us and disagreements and just our time together. I'm very selfish with it because it is so limited. And so like, I just try to soak it up when we can, and we just try to keep things happy.
Angie, do you have a community now of other spouses that
just like one
or just one that you can talk? Not really.
No. Well, I mean, I have my girlfriends, but none of them any type of lifestyle.
You're to have sorry, I cut you off, but to have friends that obviously they're supportive of you, but maybe don't understand exactly what you're going through. Like I have a friend who's in a similar position to you guys, and none of us, like her friends, are in the medical field at all. So we have like no idea what it's really like, and she'll explain it to us, but you can't really connect on that level with her. And I think she feels a little bit isolated. Like she would like for us to maybe understand a little bit more what she's going through. Is there how that is with you and your friends? And if there's ever kind of a feeling of like, oh, they just like don't understand.
Yeah.
No, I think like my closest girlfriend, I think she just gets it. She sees, and like, you know, she's pretty involved in our life, and her and her husband are like the godparents to our daughter. And so they're very involved, and I think they kind of get it. But they're not living it. She's a nurse, so I think she does maybe have a little better understanding than a completely non-medical profession. All of the residents at least in Taylor's year, I don't know a ton from like the years above and below, but the ones that are married, their spouse is also a resident. And so like at least in the ones that he's closest to, their spouse is also living that life. And so in terms there have been a few that I'm like, oh, I'd love to like, you know, get to know them more and connect with them. And it's like, oh, but their schedule also sucks. So
yeah. I mean, even just scheduling this with you guys, like it's no joke. Like I mean, we're obviously happy to. No, please don't apologize. Like we're so honored that you guys are like willing to be open about this. I mean, I agree with you, Angie. Like when you and I started talking and you used the term MedSpouse, it wasn't something that I immediately like knew what was going on, right? Like no one's like talking about it on, you know, TikTok or on Instagram. Like no one's like shining sort of the light on what that really means. And once I started researching, and Michelle and I started talking about it, and we were like, whoa, this is like huge. And the amount of people that have to be affected by it is so many. So, I mean, we really appreciate you guys just being willing to share your story with us. And, you know, on that note, what sort of advice would you guys give to a couple that's going into this? And then also, what advice do you give to the couple that's like in it and aren't doing as well as you guys are?
And you guys have both perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go first?
You can go first. You can go first.
Okay. I think for me, the main thing is I really just try to bring it back to reality. Like our relationship is good, we're happy. And then one thing that like it constantly pops into my mind is I think about like other frontline workers and how I don't have to worry about him when he's gone. And that's such a blessing. Like, yes, it sucks that he misses holidays or dinners and bedtime, or, you know, our schedules might be flipped and he sleeps during the day because he works all night and all of those things. But when he's at the hospital, I don't have to worry about him. I think about all of the spouses that have, you know, firefighter husbands or police officers or military, and all of those spouses that also deal with these frustrations and have to be worried about their spouse. And so that's a blessing. And that's something that kind of brings me back to reality of like, we're good. Like, we're going to get through this. And it's a very temporary phase. Like, it's a long journey, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so, you know, it's just taking it one day at a time, and we'll get through it. And yeah, I think we just love each other. And so we're making it work.
Taylor, do you have anything to add?
I think I would say two things. For anybody who is in my situation, you know, whether you have a family or not, I'll say from personal experience, when my son was born and the first time I saw him, I hated my job because I knew that my job was going to take me away from him.
Yeah.
So I really tried to focus on seeing him in all my patients.
Oh.
Now I'm going to cry.
No, I'm going to cry too. Oh, man.
Because it's really easy to see people as just a job.
Yeah.
And forget that you're trying to get them back to Christmas with their family.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, on a lighter note, is I heard Blake Lively say once about Ryan Reynolds that when he finishes on set, he doesn't even take his clothes. He doesn't change clothes. He just rushes home. And I try to do that.
Oh my God.
Thank you for sharing.
Your guys' story is so amazing. And we're so excited for you that you've been able to keep your relationship so strong through this. It can't be easy. And you guys are going to come out this other side so strong and be married for 40 years and maybe have some more kids.
Yeah.
Professional.
I loved, like, I'm going to also reiterate something that you guys said that stuck with me in the beginning that kind of was my takeaway too from going through this and helping other people kind of going through the same situation. I feel like you guys went into it already, like being prepared, like talking about it and communicating like what that life is going to look like. So you guys were both in a way, even though Angie, it's hard to really feel it until you're like in the position, but like Taylor, it sounded like you did a really good job of also preparing her and talking about it. And you guys had a lot of communication like going into it. So I think that probably has also helped you guys kind of go through it and understand each other. And then just, yeah, like you guys are really good at just keeping that communication alive throughout all of it, which is really special. And
Just to add something onto that, I feel like seeing your guys' story, I think that Taylor, there's nothing that you could have ever said to
right.
Angie to explain what this was actually going to be like. And I don't think, Taylor, that you could have, I mean, you're lucky that you come from a family of medical professionals, but Taylor, you were never a dad before. I don't think that anyone could ever prepare you to hold your firstborn child
Yeah.
and know that you were going to have to miss out on some of those things. I don't think that there's anything that could prepare anyone. I think that this is a massively under, like service industry that you guys are in and that you're living, and that I don't think that anything that someone could say would truly tell you how it's going to feel to not be able to be there for your wife and family as much as you want, or Angie, for you to be raising your children and miss your husband so much. I don't think that that's possible, but I think that you guys are an amazing example of someone that of people that have taken that circumstance and really made it so positive. And the fact that you're willing to talk about it and to tell other people that they're not alone and, this is what it can look like for you is amazing. It really is.
What she said.
Thank you guys so much for
Yes.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Well, thank you.
I just
That
have
was
one last thing. So
Yeah.
Taylor was saying he tries to see Wesley in every patient, and
Mhm.
from the doctor's perspective, trying to really prioritize getting these people healthy and home. On the flip side, just on like the patient side, I think it's really
Mhm.
easy to forget that doctors have families too, and that they're trying to do their job and then get home to see their family. And there have been so many times that like, I got Wesley down to sleep and I'm sitting there with a hot meal, like waiting for Taylor to come home because he's like, yep, I should be home around 7.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't hear from him. 9 o'clock rolls around and he walks in the door and he's like, I'm so sorry I'm late. This lady was just screaming at me because I couldn't save her son. And, like there's both sides are so human, and it's so
Yeah.
easy to forget that, we all have lives outside of our job that we're trying to get home to. And that's something that's like
so true.
been it's been interesting to see both sides of it, because like I'll take the kids to the doctor and it'll take us an hour to just do like a quick checkup, and I'm just like, why, and blah, 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 and I'm frustrated, and he's like, well, and he's like, so I see both sides, and I think it's so easy to forget that like, doctors are humans. And
That's such a good lesson for all of us. That's really so true. And I feel like even, being on wait lists to like get into my doctors and stuff, you undervalue that just
Mhm.
naturally. And I agree. I think that all of us need to start seeing people in the medical profession as humans.
Right.
Because I think in a lot of ways, you're just looking for them for answers, to fix something, to help you with something, to tell you what to do. But you're not thinking about like their emotional state ever.
Yeah.
That must be really hard for you, Taylor.
Yeah. There's a lot of the emotional side of medicine is definitely like the hardest. I think most people think it's like, oh, you have to go to med school, you have to know all this stuff, but it's not the hard part.
Yeah.
I think that in the long run, I mean, that's most of medicine. I think it's the people. I mean, most of what we do is like algorithmic, and a lot of it is just like pattern recognition. And when you do it for 100 hours a week, like this, there's hard stuff, but it's not like House. Like if you ever watch that show, like that's not how medicine works. We don't do that. We don't think that hard. Most of the things
Spoiler
they do, yeah. So, but like, knowing how to talk to people and how to empathize with people and show compassion and, like I said, treat them like you'd want your family member treated. Like that can be hard, especially when you're in a rush to go home.
Right.
Yeah.
And that like you're gonna go through this conversation really quick, still try to give them compassion, and they're gonna be mad at you, and then you're gonna get home and like maybe your wife is upset with you because you're like, well, this is like really a loser situation, even though I was rushing. But Ange is almost never upset at me that I'm late. I think 'cause I'm late so much, she's used to it.
Aw.
Used to it.
Well, on that note, we literally could not thank you guys enough. We've taken up enough of your time. We so appreciate you guys. We know how, every minute really matters to you. And the fact that you were willing to come on Love and Pasta and really be open and vulnerable and really share, how you guys have gotten through the medical experience together. We're excited, and hopefully, Ange, we can help sort of create a community around you and find you some MedSpouse friends is like the goal of this pod. I hope that like you get amazing outreach of other people that are going through what you are and can help you, just support you and be there for you. And same for you, Taylor. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
for
I want
having
to
us.
be a support for any of your listeners that are going through something similar.
We'll make sure they can reach you.
And you're so selfless. You guys are literally the best couple ever. I love both of you. I'm really happy. Michelle and I, totally, to be honest, we didn't know a lot about your story. Even like our pre-recording call, it was funny because Andrew was definitely like filling us in, but Taylor really like sat back and listened. And I had said to Michelle, I was like, I don't know like how much, of a story we're gonna get here, but this has been amazing.
Yeah,
like you guys have just been so inspirational. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Okay, listen, if you're planning a wedding, you have to know about guest lists. It's like your own private social network for your big day, which is so cool. It keeps all of your guests connected in one spot. Honestly, it's so much better than just a wedding website. With guest lists, your guests can connect with each other, ask questions, and you can share real-time announcements and updates. There's also a shared photo album, so everyone can upload their pictures after the event. My husband and I went to a destination wedding where they used guest lists, and it was so much fun. The couple built excitement before the weekend by posting local guides, recommendations, and cute photos of the two of them. And even though we didn't know many people going, we connected with other guests through the app. My husband even organized a golf day with some of them, and it was great because he didn't have to bother the bride and groom for people's contact info. I also loved seeing everyone's photos in the shared photo album after. It made the whole experience a lot more personal. If you're planning your wedding, go to the App Store and download Guest List now. Search Guest List Wedding App in the App Store or Google Play Store, or head to guestlist.app to learn more. You can also follow them on social media at GetGuestList.
That was another amazing episode of Love and Pasta.
Share your love story with us on Instagram, Pinterest, or TikTok at Pasta Night Club. We can't wait to see what you send, and we'd love to feature you on our next episode.